Welcome to SVG-TV News for Monday, March 6th, 2017. I'm Lafern Fraser with the details. Acknowledging that the absence of crime is abnormal but should be kept at the lowest levels, it should also be acknowledged that SVG is situated in a dangerous neighborhood, which gives rise to the need to keep the illegal breach of the country's borders at a minimum. That's according to Prime Minister and Minister of National Security, Dr. Ralph Gonsalves, in his address at the opening of a 5-day regional border management workshop held here earlier today, noting that his government takes seriously the issue of border security, whether by air or sea. Prime Minister Gonsalves thanked all involved stakeholders for investing in the capacity building of this country's customs and immigration personnel.
We have 5 airports, 2 seaports here on St. Vincent, and we have 7 in the rest of the chain, the island chain. We have a cruise ship here, and we have several other ports of entry. Keep the breach of our borders, the illegal breaches of our borders, to an absolute minimum. And for that, we need people, and we need equipment and other material resources. In St. Vincent and the Grenadines, between the police force, the Coast Guard, customs and excise and immigration, we have about 1,300 persons. For a small country, that's a significant number. And we spend recurrent in excess of $50 million on them. And in another week or so, we may well see the Transport and Safety Administration here, the TSA, out of the United States to see how we are doing with our security systems and personnel out at the Argyle International Airport.
Highlighting that measures are already in place to monitor and secure the country's borders, Prime Minister Gonsalves pointed out that there is still room for improvement.
The Advanced Passenger Information System obviously helps, and also the Advanced Cargo Information System. But they help if people come in the usual channels. But it doesn't help if you come in into one of the bays, the many bays in the archipelago. And that's why we need the Coast Guard, and that's why we need the intelligence. What we have to do. Now, the Coast Guard, we need more Coast Guard assets. President Obama, under the Caribbean Security Basin Initiative, helped us with 2 boats, and helped us in having a Coast Guard base in the southern Grenadines in Canawan, and they have improved things. And we have Patrick Manning helped us with a radar system around St. Vincent, which gives us almost 100% coverage. So all these matters help.
Dr. Gonsalves further asked the participants to fully engage themselves in the workshop proceedings, as it will aid in providing a better experience for persons entering the country.
Otherwise, people are not going to want to come to your airport. You can have a beautiful airport, and you can have all the physical facilities for easy flow. You have to help the easy flow of the people who come in. As I say, the vast majority of them are decent, law-abiding citizens who simply want to go about their business, enjoy the country like Luca and so on, but not to make it appear that you don't want them to come into your country. And if you have any basis on which for somebody to be detained or even arrested, there's no need to treat them rudely, Just know the law and treat them in accordance with the law. And we have minimum standards, accepted standards internationally as to how they should be treated. You don't have to behave as if you're a fascist or anything like that. You just simply carry out your duties with the quiet professionalism and with the firmness and with the clarity which your job demands.
Psychological impact after a disaster must become a top priority for persons or organizations involved in disaster management. So says President of the SVG Red Cross Association, Bernard Morgan. The SVG Red Cross Association, in collaboration with NEMO, is hosting a 4-day workshop which focuses on the training of persons to assist affected individuals in the aftermath of a disaster. The Red Cross Association president noted that following the November 29, 2016 trough system, which wreaked havoc on the windward side of the island, a lot of attention was given to the physical impact of infrastructure, but limited, if any, was given to the impact on the affected individuals and their psychological well-being. Psychologist in the Ministry of Health, Dr. Joselle Miller, who is facilitating the workshop, is of the opinion that persons should be cognizant that every occurrence has a psychological effect.
Psychosocial trauma response is vital in any crisis intervention. When we would have looked at the rock gutter situation and the 2013 floods and even the floods of last year, we would realize that quite a few persons had a new reality that they have to start accepting and living with. And it is not exactly the easiest thing for persons to accept change. But when change is forced upon you and you have no choice but to wake up the next day, face your children, face the situation and decide, how am I going to move on? How am I going to step into something new? You know, sometimes we think of things and we say, oh God, I don't know how I can manage that. If that were me, I would have this or that. And the thing is, human beings have an innate resiliency even though we don't realize it. And sometimes persons have to be trained in, trying to help persons to bring out this sort of resiliency and this empower them to understand that life continues and you can still live even though circumstances will have changed.
Dr. Miller said in the coming days, the workshop will be targeting different components of psychological effects.
The purpose of this trauma response training for this week, we are going to be looking at developing tools, primarily looking at psychological first aid tools. We're going to also be looking at trauma resiliency, the trauma resiliency model, looking at skills like tracking and grounding. It is very important that as first responders, persons understand what is it you do when you come to a situation, when you come to a crisis intervention on the initial phases, because there are different phases to crisis, and we are going to be going through some of that information and material over the week with the aim that at the end of the week we'll be able to, as a group, put together some assessment tools that can be used in the future, as well as broaden our minds to think about how we can monitor and evaluate some of these tools over a period of time.
About 25 persons from the Red Cross Association, counselors and community volunteers are participating in the workshop. The St. Vincent and the Grenadines Broadcasting Corporation, SVG-BC, wishes to advise that the information which was made public via social media on Saturday, March 4th, 2017, indicating SVG-TV or SVG-TV News reported that the La Soufrière volcano had become active was false and did not originate from these broadcast outlets. SVG-BC wishes to make it clear that no information was released from either SVG-TV or SVG-TV News, which could in any way suggest that the La Soufrière volcano had become active and was responsible for the rough seas and heavy winds experienced a day earlier. As a responsible media organization, SVG-BC would not be part of any activity which is meant to create public fear and alarm. Investigations are taking place here into the death of 2 persons who were electrocuted within days in separate incidents. On Saturday morning, residents of Bayabu were thrown into a state of shock when one of their own, Nicholas John, a mason in his 30s, was electrocuted at a work site in the area. Earlier today, SVG-TV News caught up with 2 of his friends and colleagues who spoke to us on the incident. Ralph Hunt described John as a hard-working individual and spoke to us on the impact that his death has on his family and the community.
A mason same like me, But we leave and cut in plywood, you know. You do this power song and cut the plywood. But I leave and go away when he cut in the plywood. So I don't see we take place with him when I come back. I hear somebody bawling out and say, come, bring your rubber thing and come. So when we come we meet him and pant up the plywood lay down. Yes, nothing. Real nice and decent boy. Yeah.
And he will be a major loss.
Yes. Everybody cry when he landed. My mother in Southern Cal, she started to cry. Because my mother knew about him. Everybody.
Okay, and he was known as somebody.
Yes, known, really known. Really known, very true.
Another friend and colleague, Roland London, also described John as a good man and believes more must be done to ensure the safety of workmen on site.
Because John was a very good friend to me and a very, very helpful worker around my society to everybody. Largely missing by me, my friends and others.
In terms of the industry in masonry, do you think there should be additional safety precautions for persons in your industry now? Should other companies come forward and say, look, now we haven't masons been affected by electricity and water, and so do you think there should be additional safety tips?
Largely about that. Additional to that, I just hear another guy in India to get shocked up too.
So safety is something.
Yes. So I expect them to just step to a higher standard, actually helping out about those situations.
Meanwhile, reports reaching SVG-TV News are that Andrew Tittle, a resident of Glen, was electrocuted today while carrying out work at the Balcom Estate at Indian Bay. Reports indicated that Tittle was on a ladder when he lost balance and held onto a wire which exploded, killing him. Representatives of the estate say they are heartbroken over the tragic incident and describe Tittle as a hard-working individual. Noting that they will use the law to pursue justice in the interest of the people, leader of the New Democratic Party, the NDP, Dr. Godwin Friday, says that they are ready for the election petitions hearing in the Court of Appeal in St. Lucia tomorrow. The full legal team of the opposition, headed by Queen's Counsel Stanley Stocky John, was expected to leave the state sometime today for St. Lucia. Dr. Friday, who admitted that the delay in the petition hearings was at times frustrating, believed that his team has a good case against which to overturn the ruling, which was given by Justice Brian Cottle in June of 2016.
There's a reason why there is a law that allows you to challenge the results of elections. If you don't use it, then it becomes redundant. We don't believe that the process is, well, first of all, I certainly can agree that the delay in the pursuing these matters by it taking so long for it to be resolved, that is a problem. These matters should be really expedited and they should be dealt with very, very quickly. But the process itself doesn't negate the fact that when there are real issues to be determined, which we believe are here, that you have to pursue them. That is part of our democratic process as well. So, and we believe that there are very, very good grounds on which these matters are going forward. We will have to wait for the Court of Appeal to make its decision. And all we're doing is using the process, using the law that's there to pursue the rights of the people in Central Leeward and North Windward specifically, but I think it's a matter for the whole country.
The elections petition case was filed by the opposition after the ruling Unity Labour Party, the ULP, won the December 9th, 2015 general elections. The opposition New Democratic Party is claiming that there were discrepancies in the results for the Central Leeward and North Windward constituencies. However, several observer missions, including from the Organization of American States, the OAS, declared the election process as free and fair. And lawyer and opposition Senator Zita Barnwell explained on the New Democratic Party's New Times radio program today that the petition hearing will not be a trial as most people have come to believe. She clarified that the hearing in St. Lucia will seek to have the petition case back in the court of law as it was struck out by Justice Brian Cottle on the grounds that the NDP's legal team did not meet the requirements of Section 558(1)(b) and C of the Representation of the People's Act, as well as Rule 9 of the House of Assembly Election Petition Rules 2014.
The Court of Appeal will not be making a decision on the merits of the petition. If we all recall, the petitions were never actually heard. There was no trial of the petitions. So what we are actually challenging is the decisions to have actually struck out the petitions at an early stage. Once we are successful in that appeal, in this appeal tomorrow, what will happen most likely is that the Court of Appeal will send the petitions back to be heard at the High Court. So it's not, I know that some people have a misunderstanding thinking that the Court of Appeal will be making a decision on the merits of the petition. Remember, the petition never went through the Court of Appeal as yet. There was no trial, and that was what we were arguing for, is that we ought to have had trial directions and that the petitions ought to have been heard. Of course, as we know, Justice Cutler had decided against that argument and had struck the petitions out. So that is what that is what is being appealed tomorrow, the decisions to have struck the petitions out.
Senator Barnwell further explained that the hearing could be heard by any judge if the ruling is granted to return to court. She, however, noted that if Justice Cottle is selected to hear the case, it is likely that their legal team will request that he recuse himself from the matter.
Tomorrow, and after the arguments are heard, the matter is done for an entire day. The entire day was allocated for the petitions tomorrow, and I am not sure if people would have understood that one of the reasons why it's not heard in St. Vincent is because it was closest or earliest date that we could have gotten before the May hearing when the Court of Appeal comes to St. Vincent in May. Anything is possible. Whether it's probably another story, but I am sure if it were to be the case that we would ask for his recusal on that. I mean, he has listened to these things twice before, and maybe it might not be the best thing for. And as I said, I can't say. I don't sit in the registrar's office,
I know.
or in the Attorney General's office, or even in St. Lucia at the registrar that deals with the allocation of judges to matters or whatever the case may be. So it will be a sensitive issue for us to discuss as to whether or not that is something we want, and we'd hope not. Obviously, it appears, on the matter in which he has ruled him, we would think that there has been a bias, and we'd prefer not to have that particular judge hear the matter.
Former Venezuelan President, the late Hugo Chavez, was remembered here at a special event held on Sunday evening at the Sign Hill Hard Court, where tributes were paid to him for his work and the legacy he left behind. This country in particular benefited greatly under his leadership, which aided in national development. Nolisha Miller has more on the event in this report.
Many Vincentians came together on Sunday evening, March 5th, 2017, to commemorate the 4th year of the death of the influential Venezuelan leader Hugo Chavez. The commander, as he was widely known, has significantly influenced the lives of many here, regionally and internationally, following his election in 1998. Chavez's democratic ascent to the presidency in 1999 ushered in a new era in Venezuelan politics and its international relations. Known for his lengthy speeches on everything from the evils of capitalism to the proper way to conserve water while showering, Chavez was the first of a wave of leftist presidents to come to power in Latin America in the last dozen years. As the most vocal U.S. adversary in the region, he influenced other leaders to take a similar stance. And boasting on the significant bond between this country and Venezuela, President of the Venezuelan Vincentian Friendship Association, Mike Brown, spoke on the numerous projects implemented here in SVG, funded by the Venezuelan government.
The projects conducted by the Embassy of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela are numerous and very diverse. If you list them, you probably come up with about some 50 projects, ranging from modest facilities like this with a hard court, and they did quite a number of playing fields to the embassy, to giving some 2,000 people free water connections. I was a minister at the time at mobilization, and we had worked with CWSA to connect some 2,000 homes. Free water connections through the input of the Embassy of Venezuela.
Government Senator Luke Brown stressed on the continued remembrance of the former Venezuelan leader and his contribution to SVG.
And who knows what will happen in 20 years' time? And will there be an attempt to erase the contribution that Cuba and Venezuela made to the construction of the greatest capital project to ever take place in St. Vincent and the Grenadines? And I want to tell Daki that they might have their intentions, that is to say imperialism. But as a young man coming up in this country, I want to say that if in 20 years' time, should I still be around, and all things being equal, I will be, imperialism will continue to have opposition in that pursuit in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The contribution that has been made in that respect must be immortal. Just like the memory of Hugo Chavez must be immortal.
And speaking on the invaluable lessons instilled by the renowned leader, Venezuelan ambassador to St. Vincent, Yuri Pimentel, spoke on the legacy of Chavez and what it represents.
Faced with the inclement attacks of the United States and the mass media that Washington handles against our revolution, Chavez taught us to raise our voice and lose fear of the empire, as Bolivian President Evo Morales recalled today. Imperialism, which could never defeat him in life, took advantage of his death to implement the strongest and most criminal assault on our country. They have developed a gigantic economic war against us, psychological warfare, and constant lies through their media, allied with internal groups of oligarchs who for decades controlled Venezuela and its wealth until Chavez arrived to put that wealth at the service of the poor and needy.
Chavez passed away on March 5th, 2013. Nolisha Miller, The Evening News.
A series of events will be held here over the coming days into next week to allow the promotion, retention and revival of the Garifuna heritage here in SVG. This is through the 4th Annual International Garifuna Summit, which officially opens here tomorrow evening at the Methodist Church Hall under the theme Celebrating Our Indigenous Heritage and Culture from Mainland to Islands and Return, Strengthening Links, Forging Networks, Claiming Ancestral Space. Outlining that the summit, which will climax on National Heroes Day, March 14th, 2017, provides an excellent opportunity to showcase the Garifuna culture during this country's Heritage Month. Chairperson of the summit's planning committee, Zoila Ellis-Brown, said persons can expect a great experience as they learn more about the Garifuna culture and heritage.
The Garifuna heritage is a mixture of the Kalinago culture and heritage and the African culture and heritage, which combine here on the island of St. Vincent to form, which was known as the island of Urume by the indigenous people. This physical space of islands is the homeland, the spiritual homeland of the culture and of the people, because the memory of this island has never left, even 220 years later, to strengthen the culture and heritage, the Garifuna culture and heritage in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, because as it's thriving elsewhere, it is vibrant and alive elsewhere, but we still need to ensure that here on Urume, where it was born, that it becomes as strong as it is everywhere else.
Highlighting some of the events scheduled to take place during the summit, Ellis-Brown placed emphasis on the International Garifuna Conference to take place on Wednesday at the Peace Memorial Hall.
The conference will be preceded by an opening ceremony, which will be on the Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. at the Methodist Church Hall. Wednesday morning starting at 9, registration begins at 8. Registration is free. We recognize that both of these strands are absolutely critical and important to us and to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So we say our theme from mainland to island. Then after the expulsion and exile, we went to the other mainland, which is Central America. So we go back to the mainland. But we always have St. Vincent and the Grenadines as the connection point. So we return. And we want to emphasize during these events the need for this flow.
Proclaiming his interest in learning and researching about the survival of the indigenous peoples, renowned historian and keynote speaker at this year's International Garifuna Conference, Dr. Lennox Honeychurch, while giving a brief insight of his presentations, commended the work of the Garifuna Heritage Foundation for seeing it fit to host an event of such significance.
But here we are, living as if we are living on a shell that we have inherited from the colonial past, wherever our origins are, whether it's from Africa, from Europe, or from Central America and South America. But we really don't know the deeper roots. We have to proceed into an investigation of a deeper understanding of the ecology and the early heritage of Yorùbá. And certain aspects of it has been done. But we have to strengthen that investigation. As part of the team that is presenting papers, I'm presenting paper on the amazing dictionary of Father Raymond Breton. Now, he was a French missionary who lived and worked in Dominica among the Kalinago people, and he put together this amazing dictionary, which is more like an encyclopedia of the way of life and the language of the Kalinago people. It is through the work of Breton that we even found out what the names of the islands are, whether it's Waitukubuli for Dominica, you know, or Ichirugaranim for Barbados, or Yorùbá. And I'm going to be dealing with the various versions of the naming of St. Vincent.
Promised to be a very exciting and interactive learning experience, Dr. Honeychurch further urged the Vincentian public to come out and support, as well as learn about their heritage, not only at the conference, but at the other scheduled activities.
Well, I think it's extremely important for us to understand the significance of this group of people, not only to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, but to the entire Caribbean area. Because it was a climatic event. It was the meeting of two groups of people from across the Atlantic. That is, the indigenous people who came up the islands from South America and were in St. Vincent, Yorùbá at the time, and then the African arrivals who came across. Encourage as many people as possible to come to listen on Wednesday to the various papers that are going to be presented. So there are these important papers that are going to be presented, inspiring, I hope, that will stimulate people's adventure into the deeper heritage of Yorùbá, St. Vincent, the Grenadines, Waitukubuli, Iwanora, all of them, those islands that were once dominated by a mixture of Kalinago people and people from West Africa.